What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Get the Gloves podcast, podcast where we'll be bringing you some conversation on really combat sports in general. So sometimes we'll have conversations on mixed martial arts, whether it's UFC, Bellator, among other different organizations. Also some boxing talk. And then if I can persuade these two on the call as well to talk a little bit about professional wrestling, we may sneak that
I gotta
in.
go. I gotta go.
All right. Enough time here, guys. I'll see you later.
But yeah, my name's Raul. I'm gonna let these guys introduce themselves as well.
Jose.
My name's Chris. Nice to meet you guys.
Cool. So yeah, like I mentioned, we're gonna be getting into conversation on everything that's going on. Obviously, right now with COVID, really mixed martial arts has kept us, really grounded in regards to live sports on television. Right now, we're kind of getting over that a little bit because NBA opened up and stuff like that. But for a while, Dana White really was the real MVP out here in these streets.
Absolutely.
And then speaking of like UFC and everything they've got going on, Jose, I know they got a card going on tomorrow. I don't know if you want to get us started on that. I know it's UFC Fight Night.
Yeah, and their fight nights now, they all have like different names. So I think it's like UFC Fight Night Las Vegas 5 or something. The headlining fight is Alexei Oleinik versus Derek Lewis. So that should be a good fight. Lewis is very weird. Like he can lose a fight for 14 minutes. It just takes one punch to knock somebody out. Like exactly what we did with World Cup a couple years ago.
Yeah, exactly. Last minute knockout.
Oleinik's got, I think, like he's a 73rd fight he's going into tomorrow, and then
I think it's the 74th actually.
Yeah, so he's got like 50 or 60 submissions. He has 12 Ezekiel chokes, which is crazy.
Insane.
So yeah, that's
really
gonna be definitely a good fight. It's gonna be a headlining fight. I really like Derek Lewis. I think he's one of those guys that, like you mentioned, he may not be the most in shape guy. You can see him out and about. You won't really think he's a straight up killer, but in the octagon, I mean, he's got power. He's put dudes lights out in the past. And you mentioned the Volkov fight. That's a perfect example. And then I know on the there's a few other decent fights on there on the undercard. If you guys just give me a second, I can pull it up, and maybe we can talk to Chris a little bit and see what his thoughts are on some of the other fights. Actually, tomorrow Weidman fights as well. So Chris Weidman's coming back. What do you think about that?
Yeah, Chris Weidman is fighting that gentleman, Omari. I don't know how to pronounce the gentleman's last name, but
Akhmedov.
Thank you, sir. So Weidman is a funny character. I'm pretty biased against Weidman, if I'm being honest. But if I'm gonna be, oh man, let's give this guy some love, I guess, right? He knocked out the GOAT, like Jose said, Anderson Silva, even though it was a fluke.
That leg.
Either way, he did knock him out. But you know what? Here's the thing. Nowadays in 2020, Weidman's allure is just that. And how many years ago was that? He hasn't won in 3 years, guys. I think it might be time, man.
I think he's 1-6 in his last 7 fights.
Yeah.
I mean, his last fight is like.
I would say this for sure is a make it or break fight for Chris Weidman.
I agree.
Many people could probably say that he should have retired like 3 fights ago.
And
some hitting knockouts. For a young guy that was undefeated and then just went on a string of losses.
Yeah. And the wild thing to me. Sorry, go ahead. No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
The last loss was really bad against Dominic Reyes. I mean, he looked like he shouldn't have been in there with him, even though, like, obviously, listen, he is a former champion. He had a very good reign while being the midweight champion. But, like, Reyes is a freak. A lot of people thought he won his fight with Jones. I mean, first time watching that fight, I thought Jones won it. Then the second time, I'm like, ooh, yeah, it's either
Agreed.
way.
Yeah, same thing.
But this fight for Weidman, it's going to be tough because Akhmedov is a very he's good all the way around. So he can stand up, wrestling, everything. He's one of these Russian dudes that they just do everything and they're just savages. So I mean, I don't think he's going to win the fight, to be honest. And I want him to win because, like, the dude is just gone through a horrible rough patch of like all these losses and stuff. And it's not just like decision losses. He's getting knocked out every time, and it's bad. So I mean, I hope he pulls this out. He looks in great shape. He trained this fight camp with Wonderboy Thompson, his brother-in-law in South Carolina. So I mean, I think that should help. Maybe a new look, leaving home for a little bit will give him like kind of like refresh him. He looked in amazing shape, like probably the best I've seen him look at 185 in a while. So hopefully he can pull this out. But it's a tough. I mean, the dude's ranked 11. Akhmedov, Weidman is out of the rankings now because he went between 205 and back to middleweight. So I mean, we'll see how it goes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and the wild thing is that the gentleman Omari, he in the last 6 fights, he's got 5 wins and 1 no contest, I believe, or 1 draw maybe. So he's got a nice streak coming along here. And Weidman has been nothing but beat up in this last, like Jose said, 6 fights in a matter of 3 years or something like that. I mean, and the wild thing to me is that Weidman is coming in as the favorite here. That
I
just
don't
blows
understand
my
that.
mind, man. Is it because of the name? I mean, if I'm right, Weidman is a -135.
Yeah,
yeah,
I saw that.
How? How does that happen? I mean, it doesn't
yeah,
make
man.
sense to me.
Every time I think of Weidman, especially as of late, I think about that Yoel Romero loss. That was
Oh,
a devastating.
It
I
was,
think it was a
it,
knee to the
people,
head, man. And
yeah, he went. It
he
was like
lost a
going for like a
lot of blood.
takedown.
He
jump
lost a
me, yeah.
lot of
Yeah,
blood,
yeah.
man.
Yeah, that was brutal.
And
That was brutal.
like I mentioned, many people could have had a fair argument if he would have retired then, but then he went
Yeah,
on to have a few other losses after that. So
yeah.
I think he's definitely at the fork in the road right now in his career. And listen, I love to see grueling fights just as much as anyone else, but the reality is when you see a young guy like Chris Weidman, a guy that really was at the top of the sport once upon a time, you want to see him go out like with his brain in shape,
Yeah, yeah.
um, because far too often guys like that, when we talk about him, Luke Rockhold, dudes like that,
Mm-hmm.
they just seem like nice guys, man. But it's one of those guys where you got to carry them out of the octagon, and you don't
Yeah,
really hate
go
to
out on
see
a
that.
shield.
Yeah, you hate to see that with those guys. So hopefully he gets back on the winning streak here. Honestly, I don't know where he fits in the division. Like you mentioned, Jose, he's unranked right now. And let's face it, like especially with UFC, I feel as though, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, like a lot of these guys, they live off of their name for a really long time.
Mm-hmm.
Even when they're unranked, you got guys like Clay Guida that are still around. But the
Yep.
reality is, man, like every single day, there's a new killer that's signed to the UFC. And it's a global sport, right? So it'd be dudes that you never even heard of, man.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what scares me. It's these guys that we look at as legends that we really love to watch, that have entertained us, getting in there with some young, hungry fighters, man. And that's where you see a lot of things go wrong. So, I'm looking forward to the fight. I'm looking forward to the card. But I'm just hoping Weidman makes it out of this one. Decent
Listen,
shape.
if he loses, I would like to see him lose in a
It's got to
decision.
retire. It's
I
got to
just don't
retire
want
if
to
he
see.
loses.
I don't want to see him take any more excess damage and stuff like
Yeah.
that. Look, again, part of the reason I think he may do actually pretty well tomorrow, him, training with Wonder Boy. I mean, Wonder Boy is an
Amazing
amazing,
striker.
amazing kickboxer and stuff like that. So like, I think maybe training with someone like that who's so dynamic can like maybe help him, even though it was like one camp. But they are, again, they're family. They live there. They're
Mm-hmm.
stepbrothers and stuff. So I
Mm-hmm.
mean, they do train together occasionally, but like now he was there, and there is actually some good training partners that Wonderboy does have. He has some big guys in there that I know. One of the guys was on the Contender Series last year, and he did pretty well in his fight. He didn't get the contract, but he won his fight. So that should definitely be hopefully Wyman can just make it past the first round.
Yeah, and that's funny to even like suggest that's what we want from him, to make it out of the first round. It's because Dominic just destroyed him, and what was it, the second round, I believe. Chris
No,
Weidman,
pretty sure it
did
was
he make it out
first,
of the
man.
first? Oh, Jesus
Pretty sure
Christ!
it was the first.
That's insane to me. So for him to make it out of the first here, I mean, this is his weight class, yeah, sure, but again, you hope for the best, but he hasn't looked good in some time, so it's hard to really put your money down on him. You know what I mean? So I guess we'll see.
I look at it like this. I think between Raul brought up Rockhold before. Rockhold and Weidman have not been the same since that championship fight.
No,
Like
yeah,
it
yeah,
shows. I mean, Rockhold obviously won that fight. But him after that fight too, he next fight lost to Bisping, and
yeah,
then
knockout.
and then I forgot after that. I forgot what he came back to, but I know he lost the next fight. Oh no, actually he won his next fight. Came back, fought David Branch, and he choked him out.
Yeah,
And
David Branch.
then boom, they put him back into a title shot. He was supposed to fight Whitaker. Whitaker pulled out because he was hurt. Had to fight Yoel Romero, and Yoel Romero murdered him. Like he
But
killed him.
he's such a world beater, man. He's like such
Yeah,
a freak athlete, man. It's hard to put anybody
and
against him. He's so scary.
I bring up Rocco because both of them at this, like, they're very similar because they both have some
Yeah.
really, really bad knockout losses. Like
Yeah.
Rockhold, every time he's lost, it's been a bad knockout loss.
And they
Same
were
thing with
both champs.
Weidman, you know?
And like I mentioned, you know, they're guys that look like just like your everyday Joe kind of guy, where they don't really need to be fighting. You know, I know that obviously Weidman had the belt. Rockhold was modeling for some time. It's guys that really, you know, they've got a life outside of the octagon, you know. So it's just, you hate to see them take those big losses where they're taking a lot of damage, you know.
All that damage, yeah.
And I know that also, like, in regards to damage and that conversation, we're going to be touching upon another topic later on in the conversation. But, you know, like I mentioned before, this is this fight card's going on tomorrow, which is August 8th. It's Saturday night at the UFC Apex Center in Las Vegas, Nevada. And man, like, how happy are the UFC right now to know that they have the Apex, right? Especially at a time like this, you know, where stadiums are closed, arenas are closed. The idea that they have a training facility that's state of the art, where they can host fights there, especially in the States, I think that that's something that really proved its worth during times like these.
Yeah, I mean, it worked out perfectly. They built this to hold basically the Contender Series and have all these different type of shows. Dana wants to bring boxing there. He wants to do a whole
And that
bunch of
small
different things
octagon
there.
too. Not to cut
Yeah.
you off, but that small
Ooh.
octagon, right?
Yeah. Yes,
I
sir.
mean, the fights have been amazing there. You know, I think these next two main events are going to be interesting because they're both heavyweight
Big
fights,
boys.
obviously. So I mean, it's weird because I mean, well, like Oleinik is not really like, obviously he's a grappler, like submission wise, but he's not the biggest like kind of like wrestler. So I think this fight's gonna stay standing for a bit, and then I think probably Lewis is gonna knock him out. I just think that his hands are way too heavy for Oleinik to like kind of deal with.
And I know Chris mentioned the odds on the Weidman fight, just so everyone knows. In regards to the main event, Derek Lewis, as of right now, is a minus 200 favorite. So Vegas and the money's going on Derek Lewis heavy right now.
Yeah, and
All right, cool.
I
Bet
think
all the underdogs.
yeah, on this,
Gotta win some money.
Jose, man, if pull guard and pull something of the back he has, which I don't know if anybody, well, I'm sure people know, but Derek Lewis is tied with JDS and Cain Velasquez for the most knockouts in heavyweight history at 10. That's insane, man. I didn't know that. I just found that out earlier today. That's insane. The guy has hands, and he just proves it and proves it and proves it. And he'll put him away if given the chance, for sure. Even though he did say today that he wasn't in his best condition, that could be a little bit of a boost, maybe.
I honestly take anything he says in his interviews with a grain of salt because he honestly he's a bit of a troll. So like
Derek Lewis.
Derek Lewis, yeah, he's a bit of a troll. I mean, like he just says whatever. Like he said,
my balls are hot, baby. My balls are hot.
Yeah, I would also say he's got top 5 fighter social media pages, right? In
his Instagram,
he's got to be top 5, right?
Instagram page is the best.
He's got to be top 5.
Chris wouldn't know about the Instagram page, but you know.
Nah, I'm living under a rock, baby.
There's nothing wrong with that. Let me tell you that. Let me tell you something, man. There's nothing wrong with that. So just obviously there's going to be some other fights in there. I don't know if Jose, if you wanted to get into any of the other fights on the card. Me personally, you know, when I look at the card, obviously I think the Holland situation is a very interesting one, right? He was supposed to fight last week, and right before the fight, during the walkout, Trevin Giles, you know, passed out, and then Holland was left without a fight. So he'll be doing a quick turnaround, and he'll be fighting Joaquin Buckley. He'll be fighting Joaquin Buckley tomorrow.
And Holland said like he was trying to tell Dana go find Ed Herman because Ed Herman had lost his fight too on the same day. He was like go get him, I'll fight him. And again, Ed Herman was fighting at 205. Kevin Holland was fighting at 185, and he also fights at one. He wants to go down to 170. He's fought at 170 before. So this dude is just wild. He's like he's literally I'll fight anyone anywhere at any weight. Like it don't matter to him.
He's a monster, man. He's a big boy too.
He fought Thiago Santos. Like, and he went to decision with him. Like he lost, but like he went to decision.
He's no joke.
Like you Santos murks dudes, man. So to see that like that dude who fights as low as 170 can stand in there with him, it's you know he's a tough dude.
Look, man, any guy with a Thor hammer on his chest, keep him away.
Yeah.
So, now what were you gonna say, Jose? I'm sorry.
I watched Buckley's last fight because he fought. I think he fought actually like last week, or he fought for LFA, to a lower level promotion. I think he might be the champion or whatever for like light heavyweight or something. But he just fought literally like a week ago, and I saw like the finish. Like he literally hit this dude with an uppercut, and the dude just like put his hands over and like basically just went down. Like he didn't hit him again. Like it. This dude must have some serious power to do that because it was literally he's walking him down to the cage, hit him with an uppercut, and the guy just like shelled up and like kind of just dropped down. So
Yeah, I'm curious to see what happens though. Obviously, with the fact that he was really cutting weight, preparing to fight Giles, and then lost the fight really at the last moment to no fault of his own, and then is doing a quick turnaround the next week to get in there again. Actually, 2 weeks. No, 1 week, right? 1 week.
Yeah, 1 week. Last week.
Yeah, literally. Yeah.
So I'm curious to see if that has any effect on his performance or on his preparation. But I guess we'll just wait and see till tomorrow night.
Yeah, because he flew home Sunday morning last week, then went home for a little bit. I think he flew back to Vegas. I think Monday or Tuesday. Because I just watched an interview today with him and someone from MMA Fighting. So like he seems like he just wants to fight. He's like, yeah, I got a bit of. Yeah, he's like, I got a bit of my show money last week, but now I get to make real money and actually. This guy should definitely make it to the octagon. So like, I'm ready to throw down. He said. So I'm looking forward to that fight.
Yeah.
Me too.
And I'm looking forward to the card in general. I feel like with everything going on, I mean, I've been watching basketball. I don't know if you guys have been watching it, but every game has been really close. It's been exciting. But something about MMA, man, right now, especially the product that the UFC puts out there, it's really exciting. And in these crazy times, you get to meet these new fighters that are champions in other leagues that really have lesser names. But hey, we've met a lot of really cool fighters that have potential over the last couple months. And speaking of that, if we can kind of like backtrack a little bit and just talk about how things have been the last couple months. Obviously, with Fight Island and the Apex, we've sure there has been no fans in attendance, but we've seen a lot of big fights, and we've seen a lot of big storylines. So what kind of fights have stood out to you all over the last couple months? If I get started, I would just say, obviously for me would be the Usman fight, the Usman Masvidal fight. It's something that we were obviously looking forward to Usman fighting Gilbert Burns, who's been on a crazy run, but with the COVID-19 positive test, Masvidal stepped in. I would have liked to see Masvidal fight Usman with a full camp. I don't think the end result is different. Honestly, I think Usman beats him 10 out of 10 times.
I don't agree.
But and that's cool. I think it's a toss up for a lot of guys, but I just think the styles really don't clash. But that would be a fight that stood out to me. I don't know if you guys have like a standout moment over the last couple months, or if you have.
For me personally, the former champion Bobby Knuckles, man, Robert Whittaker came back with a vengeance. He looked great, man, and that was against Darren Till, who's an animal in 2 different divisions. This guy can ball, man. He has probably the best skill set of anybody in the UFC. He can do it all, man. He is the utility knife of the UFC. To me, his skills are very much underrated when it comes to his wrestling, his takedown defense, his striking, but his heart, above all, animal. Love that guy. Bobby Knuckles, you're the king, man.
I think for me, it was the first fight card back, the interim lightweight title fight. Tony Ferguson and Justin Gaethje, man. That fight was amazing. That card in general was stacked. It had so many good fights on there. I think it had just the 2 title fights. I think that was when Dominic Cruz fought Henry Cejudo. That card was so freaking good. I think Francis Ngannou fought on that card. I think he knocked out Rosenstruck in like 17 seconds.
With a banger.
He killed him, man. Like that. And then again, the main event was amazing, man. I mean, I thought Justin Gaethje could win, but I didn't think he would make it. Like honestly, he made it look easy. Like Tony Ferguson was on a 12 fight win streak and beating everybody up, just running through everybody. And then he meets Justin Gaethje, and Gaethje just outclasses him and finishes him. I mean, standing up, like it was crazy.
I also wanted to say that raises a really good point, Jose. So, for example, you mentioned the situation with Justin Gaethje and and Tony Ferguson. And then before that, I talked about the Masvidal and Usman fight. I mean, it raises that great point where these champions sometimes are faced with kind of just like different circumstances that are just out of the ordinary, whether a fighter pulls out last minute and then the champion is faced with a difficult decision. Do they risk their title shot, or do they risk their title in some cases? I mean, I feel like we've been seeing that a lot lately as well. I know that Joanne Calderwood just was in a similar situation, right?
Last weekend.
And she took a loss. Obviously, Tony Ferguson was next in line. He didn't have to take that Gaethje fight. He took a loss. Obviously, Usman was on the other side of that, right? He ended up winning. But what are your thoughts on that as well? Because I think you raised a great point with all these champions or these number one contenders taking fights that really don't get them anywhere and really risking it all.
I think a little bit. It's different for some fighters. Like with Calderwood, there was no real timetable for Valentina to come back, and JoJo hasn't fought since last September already. And if I'm being honest, that fight was super close, and I honestly didn't think she won that fight. So like, she needed another fight to prove that she was worthy of getting that title shot. Because in the women's flyweight division, there's no real standouts. Like they all need to fight each other to prove that they're the champion, and then they get a title shot. And then you have Valentina, who just come on. I don't see anyone beating her at 125. There's maybe some people who can give her like tough out, but I don't see anyone beating her. And then like with Masvidal, like him taking that fight in short notice, it worked out for him because there obviously was the contract issues. And guess what? Burns got pulled out because of COVID, and boom, Masvidal gets he had all the leverage. It worked out for him. And then with Ferguson, it's just who he is. He's not gonna turn down any fight. So he took that fight. I've seen an interview he did with Ariel Helwani. He said I was training for a wrestler. I wasn't training for a stand-up fight, and it is what it is. But like, I'm not taking away from Justin, but I think if I was training for him, I would have beat him. And I mean, who knows how that fight goes in a rematch? But I don't know. I mean, I just think like certain fighters, it makes sense for them to do. Like Tony is his own person, so he's gonna do whatever he wants. It worked out for Masvidal. It worked out, and it didn't work out for Calderwood. And now the girl who beat her is getting a title shot. And that girl missed weight like 3 times in the division. So it's like, it's like, it is what it is. And me personally, I think I would like to see Jennifer Maia actually fight Cynthia Calvillo then get that title shot. I think that would have been a little bit better. But Valentina hasn't fought since I don't think she's fought this year either. I think actually no, she fought in February. She fought in February. Yeah, she fought in February. So yeah, she fought in the card.
It was like December.
It was a John Jones card. She fought with John Jones versus Dominic Reyes. So she fought there. She won her fight there. But like champions need to fight. She was.
That's the name of the game. Yeah, it's the name of the game. Yeah. Big risk, big reward. It's the name of the game.
Yep.
What are your thoughts on that, Chris?
I think it's like Jose said, man. It really does vary. I think you can either look at somebody like, who can we go back to? Let's say like a Tyron Woodley. You remember when Tyron, he was just being hated on so bad because he was waiting for the right fight. He wanted that title fight. He didn't want to fight anybody else. Then he got that Lawler fight, put him out, got that title. But before that, everybody was like, come on, man. Why aren't you fighting? Come on, you've been out for this amount of time. You've been out for a year. You've been out for 8 months. But in his mind, he knew what he needed to do to get what he wanted, and he stuck to his guns, man. So sometimes in that situation, it'll work. He obviously became a champ and defended it multiple times against some killers. And then you look at it like Jose just pointed out, man, against, Tony Ferguson and Justin Gaethje, where it just didn't go in his favor. And everybody loves Tony for what he does because he's a no-nonsense guy. He doesn't make any excuses. He'll fight you in the parking lot, in the bathroom, wherever you want. At your mother's house, it doesn't matter, man. That guy's an animal. And it just didn't work out in his favor. But guess what? He didn't lose any fans. Everybody loves that guy. But then it really just varied. And then you look at a Joanne Calderwood, who just lost. And you know what? Like Jose said, maybe she didn't necessarily deserve the title fight, but she was in line. So if she would have just sucked it up and stuck around a little bit, she would have had that title fight. And maybe she would have got lucky and beat Valentina. I mean, nobody's gonna beat Valentina in my opinion, but maybe she would have got lucky. But now, guess what? We'll never know. She has to work her way back up. So there's so many angles, man. So many angles.
Also, you got to think about, again, they are fighters and they're prize fighters. So like they need money. So like, listen, again, it is times right now, not, money is pretty tight. So like
Yeah.
again, JoJo and his fighters, they get their paycheck once they fight, and
Yep.
they're not, obviously they have like sponsors and stuff that they make, but it's your fight check is going to be more money than you probably make with your sponsors for the most part, unless you're like someone who's very popular and
Paige
stuff like
Van
that,
Zandt?
like yeah,
Listen, man.
like
Listen, Jose.
like Masvidal, stuff like that. But Calderwood, listen, she like, we know her, not everybody knows her. She's not getting paid like some of these higher tier fighters. So listen,
Yep.
again, she didn't fight since last September, and she needed, listen, she said it. She said, I can't just not fight for 16
A
months,
whole
whatever
year.
it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like, well, now Valentina's gonna fight in November. I mean, she could have
Yep.
maybe, but again, that's 3 more months. She would have been off the shelf.
Yep.
Hasn't fought since last September.
Yep.
Do you? I mean, I don't think any fighter wants to go into a title fight with being off for that long.
Agreed.
So
Agreed.
let's
There's
make
so
it
many
clear.
factors.
So let's make it clear. If Dana White watches this show, it's Jose raising the fighter pay issues, not me. I don't want no problems with Dana White in regards to fighter pay.
I'll say it like this: fighter pay needs to be better across all organizations.
And he said
some
that.
get paid a little. Again, so I'm not just saying the UFC. It's everywhere. You go listen, dude. You can watch. I'm watching Bellator right now. If they release their fight pay, there's fighters on this card that are getting paid $2,000 and $2,000.
Agreed.
So
Agreed.
$10.
Let me ask you.
$10 and a pack of cigarettes.
Let me ask you. Have they discussed the new terms as far as with the Venom deal coming into play? How's that going to work as far as the sponsorships and all that?
I don't think so.
All they've said is that the fighter's going to get more money. So.
Okay,
yeah.
That's big, right?
$2 more.
So,
$2.
You get $2.
But like actually bringing that up, like I want to know your guys' opinions on like the uniform look. I personally, I do really like it, but I do understand that fighters make money off of sponsorships, right? So me personally, I think the organization that does it the best is actually PFL. PFL has their uniform look. And then they have, I think, 2 spots or 3 spots for sponsorships. That works out perfectly. And then I think also, like, I think if you think about it, like, if you're a fighter, you can you can get more money because like if you're a popular fighter, they're gonna be like, oh man, like I want my label on his shorts. Like you can have like more. You can have like a bidding war. I think that makes the best like sense. I now that like with the UFC being so uniform for so long, I don't want to see them going back to having 50 different, patches on their shorts.
Yeah, that's
not
too
NASCAR.
much. That's insane. Yeah, I agree with you 100%, Jose. I think that's the best way to do it, and you even see it adopted by the NBA. Man, they have one patch on the chest plate, or the other side, I forget. But it looks fine. It kind of blends in, and the fighters can make their money, man. I mean, it's much more than just a sponsorship for them. It's how they feed their families. Like Jose said, like Raul said, like we all said, they could make $2,000 tonight, man. But guess what? If they're sponsored by GoDaddy.com, they can make $20,000 off of them. You know what I mean? It makes such a world of difference. And guess what? That gentleman who's working at Burger King part-time to help pay for his MMA training, he don't have to do that anymore. And now we could see the true potential of that gentleman or woman because they're getting some money. Makes sense. I love it.
Yeah, and I think it's also one of those debates where whatever the UFC does, they're gonna get hate on whatever the decision is.
They're the leader, man. They're looked at so much.
Yeah, and that's how it is, man. When you're leading the pack, man, you're the first one to face the fire, and I think that's what they've been dealing with for a while. I think that Dana, although he's very flawed in my opinion, he does have his flaws just like everyone else. I think he does a good job in he does that like shiny object trick where it's like, listen, man, let's not worry about all these things. Let's worry about everything else that's going on over here. And let's face it. I mean, listen, when you're the only show in town that really is calling the shots, then you're able to do things like that. And who knows? I don't know. I think, and also, listen, the sport is so young that who knows down the line if this could just be the start to something super new. So they may not be making the money right now, just like players in every other league have had to go through it where they weren't making big dollars in the NBA 30 years ago, right? Even Michael Jordan, his deals were very minimal, and especially the other players in the league at that time. Yeah. So now where you got guys that are the 10th man in the rotation, multi-millionaire guy every year. Yeah. That's just how it works sometimes. So maybe if we have this discussion in 20 years or in 15 years, it'll be a totally different conversation where it was like, man, that was actually a good idea. It set the stage for the players to make some decent money outside of the octagon. And who knows what else it leads to. Maybe some of these big stars getting sneaker deals. I know that Connor had a sneaker come out with Reebok
With
at some
Reebok,
point.
yeah.
So who knows what it leads to. But I think that it, like you guys talked about, there's pros and cons to it. But the idea is from a look standpoint, Jose, like you mentioned, I think the uniformity across the board really makes it look like a sport and not like some backyard fighting type of league.
Yeah.
And I think damn, I forgot what I was gonna say, but I think with like a lot of fighters will actually even listen. A lot of people don't like Conor McGregor, and that's perfectly fine. A lot of fighters point him out as actually helping out with bringing more attention to the sport and bringing more money into the sport. There's a lot of guys. Listen, some of these fighters, they are like Daniel Cormier. He admits that he makes millions of dollars now. I'm sure probably 5
he's
years
very
ago,
vocal,
something like that. Yeah, like Conor helped the sport out a lot. He brought a lot of attention. Yeah, he makes more than everybody else, but he's done almost what he's brought to the sport is more than anyone else has done. I mean, the only person who it's him, Ronda Rousey. They listen, and I don't even like Ronda Rousey.
And Brock as well. Brock, I would say Brock brought a lot of eyes.
That guy's an animal.
To the UFC.
We're talking about real fighters.
Aren't we talking about champions, bro? Are we talking about champions or not?
Real champions or
real champions? Yeah, Brock's a real champ, bro.
Brock defended his belt. Brock defended his belt.
Brock's a real champ.
I'm joking. I forgot about Brock.
Until he fought a real fighter like who was it? Overeem? Yeah, put him down, boy.
Man, but he beat Carwin, bro. I could go on all day. I'll defend Brock,
bro. I could beat Carwin right now.
Right, dude. Carwin was giving him hell,
Don't call me on that. Don't call me on that.
Dude, Carwin was giving Brock hell, but whatever. I don't want to get off on a tangent, but I would say you're right, Jose. A lot of the big fighters, they oftentimes don't get the credit, right? Because people see them as like these guys that are, they're eating, so why worry about the little guy? The idea is that the attention they bring comes from
when Conor has a fight. When Conor has a fight, every fighter wants on that card. Everyone wants on that card, and because you may not get paid more necessarily, but you're gonna get more attention on that fight. Yeah. Listen, he has all his pay-per-views they lead everything. It's
He's got the top 5.
You're top trending. It could result in more followers. Yeah. You can get Instagram followers, things like that.
Exactly. So look again. Derek Lewis, when he fought on the Khabib Conor card, he got that knockout. Bro, his Instagram jumped up like I think 1 million followers
immediately.
And that's when he started posting all that funny stuff. Like it just came in again. You perform well on a card that has a lot of like a big attention and stuff like that. It's gonna help you all across the board with sponsorships. More social media fighters now are very lucky that they get to use social media to make money as well. Listen, Paige said that she makes more money off Instagram than fighting, and there's nothing wrong with that. Listen, she may never be a champion or something like that, but she has the potential. She's a very tough girl, but like, hey, if she's making her money, listen, you may not like her fighting, whatever, but hey, listen, if she's making her money, listen, it is what it is. I mean, I think like years ago, fighters were relying so much more on those sponsorships on their clothes. They needed it. So like I think Josh Thompson was someone who was very vocal about it. He would say he used to make $100,000 just off sponsorships off his shorts on the fight night, and his contract, his fight contract wasn't even making like 60 and 60 or something like that. So it's like they went to the uniform look again. Of course, it was gonna bother a lot of people, and then there's tiers of it. So like not everybody gets paid the same. Like fighters who fought for a long time would get like 20,000 from Reebok, and then others would get 2,500. It could be, and listen, and it's about seniority. So like if you could have been in the UFC for a year, and you went crazy, you skyrocketed potential, you're a champion. Then that's when you get the more money as like the sponsorship pay. Listen, but it's tough. Like it's a definitely tough thing.
And then again, like you said too, on that same note, you rise up, you get the championship status. And obviously, besides the recognition, the belt, what comes is that pay-per-view buy as well. You get a percentage of that. You know what I mean? So these guys are making money. They're dying to be the champ now because of that money, man. And you know what? The thing is that you see that a lot where it's almost too rushed, right? I think we just saw that more recently with like a Johnny Walker, right? He had a hype train behind him. He looked pretty good for a fight or two. And Corey Anderson just dumped him. Exactly. And let me tell you, man, Stipe completely outclassed Francis, and that's a scary thing to do because Francis is the scariest man alive right now, bro. He's the new age Mike Tyson. He's just a scary man. And, Stipe outclassed him. He did his thing, and Francis had to reset, and good on him, he did. And he looks amazing. He looks amazing. But you see it, like I said, with a Johnny Walker. I feel like he maybe got rushed. Corey Anderson dumped him, and he just doesn't look the same. I know, Jose, you know better, but Johnny Walker's going to be fighting soon. It's going to be a big factor as far as if he wins, that's great. He definitely needs it. If he loses, there's a problem there, man.
Yeah, you even
Sometimes
saw it. You even saw it last week with Brunson knocking out Edmund.
Shabazian.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you know what? Exactly. That's
You got
exactly
these
right.
guys that get hyped up, and the reality is, listen, for every guy that gets hyped and is ready to be in the mix, those come a dime a dozen. It's just a reality where at any point in time, man, anything could happen in the octagon, and all these guys are huge on ego, so they all think they could be the champion, right? But the
As they
reality
should.
is, there is some sort of like a easing into. Like, I think there's levels to it, especially when you
Listen,
crack that top five.
That's what Corey Anderson said when he knocked out Johnny Walker. There's levels to this, and then he went in the next fight and he got knocked out himself too. And again,
So you found out there was levels.
There's levels. There's levels.
Yeah.
I think
there's levels where you can knock out a young rising star, and then there's a level where you get knocked out by someone that's above you. It's just it is what it is.
So, right on that same note, let's just let me be devil's advocate here. Conor McGregor, he comes in, right? His first 3 or 4 fights. Does it matter that he necessarily beat a young Max? Does it matter that he necessarily beat a younger Dustin Poirier? Do we hold that against him? Or do we say, wow, he's so good that he beat 2 up-and-coming champs, essentially?
Yeah, I would
How do
say
you view that?
Those wins look better now, I think.
Yeah, but
that's what I mean. Yeah.
Yeah, but I would also say, like I mentioned before, since it's a global sport, I think Conor in general is a very rare situation. Like, he was a double champion in his other organization. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So he was already coming in. And if I'm not mistaken, like, Cage Warriors is not like this backyard type of league.
No, it's like a feeder program for the UFC.
Yeah, they got some good talent out there. And for him to have be the champ over there and come over, I think he's just one of those rare cases where, like, when we're having these arguments, a lot of it is case by case basis. But I think Conor coming into it was the real deal, and I think that was just another thing that added to his mystique, was the fact that he talked a lot, but I mean,
backed it up.
He was backing it up,
Yeah.
And like another person who kind of like got the hype train real quick, and then it just didn't work out after they became champion. Cody Garbrandt. Cody Garbrandt went from unranked to champion in 1 year, which is crazy. And then after that he lost to TJ. There's debates if TJ was on EPO at the time, which I don't know. I think they said they test some of the old samples and there wasn't, but who knows? Again, look, he bro, what he did to Dominic Cruz, no one else has done.
Oh man, he's so outclassed him.
He could have finished that at any point.
Yeah.
He could have finished it at any point, and he didn't. He clowned him. Like, he clowned him. He made And again, Cruz is considered the best bantamweight of all time. I mean, I think TJ really is, but TJ's ruined his legacy with the whole.
He just tarnished it completely with that, man. Yeah. And let me ask you a question real quick. Who had the better win against Cruz? Was it TJ or was it Cody?
Well, TJ didn't beat him.
I'm sorry, Henry. Forgive me, Henry or Cody. Forgive me.
No, I would say Cody, man. I would say Cody, me personally. I would say Cody.
Yeah. I mean, so who finished him? But that finish was a little.
That's why I asked.
It was a little.
Cody was literally 10 steps faster than him that night.
Yeah. Like, I agree.
Bro,
I agree.
He was dancing in the octagon.
He was on fast forward that night.
Yeah, he was doing the robot and stuff. Like,
I also think the build-up was better. Like, they really did not like each other. They always have those really cool split screen interviews, and I always remember the one where Dominic was in one room and Cody was in the other room, and he's like, "Man, I'll go over there right now," And then, Dominic is kind of like antagonizing him, So I would say the build-up, and really the idea that at that time Dominic is the greatest of all time in that division. At the time that was the big deal. Cody was the guy that really didn't deserve it, but he was getting the shot. He pulled some strings and put a couple wins together. And listen, man. Not only did he perform that night, he overperformed that night. So I would personally say I think Cody had the better win over Dom than Henry. And that's not taking anything away from Henry, because I know that stoppage is a little controversial, but I think even if it didn't happen then, it was going to happen eventually. I think
Oh
that
yeah.
He was winning the fight. He was
also it
dominating.
was a different Dominic. You know what I mean? The Dominic that Cody fought a few years ago was different than the one that Henry fought. Even though it was kind of weird because with all the layoffs, you know what I mean? I
Yeah.
would say it was just a different Dom.
I don't think Dominic should have been in that title fight anyway. But then again, Aldo was supposed to fight for the title,
Yep.
and I mean he wasn't able to get in the country because of the coronavirus. So I mean, they put that fight together just to have more hype for it. I felt. I mean, because Cruz he hasn't fought since he fought Cody. He lost that fight, so now he's on a 2-fight losing streak. You know.
Yeah.
And
He
then
said,
there was that controversy with Keith Peterson after the fight. You know what I mean? Where he said he smelled
yeah, man,
like cigarettes and alcohol
cigarettes
or
and
whatever.
alcohol. Sounds like a good time.
So it's just one of
Sign
those
me
things
up.
where it's like I don't know, man. I don't know what's going on with the game, man. I think that I think the mixed martial arts game has, although it's come a long way, man. It's come a long way from no weight classes. You got dudes in there like real life
Sumo
blood sport.
wrestlers.
You know what I
Got
mean?
sneakers on.
Yeah,
Throwing
to
sand
where
in your
it is
eyes.
now. But I would also say, man, I'm sure a lot of those guys that really laid the groundwork for the sport, they look at what's happening right now, man, and they may not agree with it, man. There's a lot of nonsense that's coming along with the game. And I'm not saying it's always with the trash talk. It's just with the changing times. I mean, we just saw that the other day with the whole Herb Dean controversy, right? Where it's like, listen, man, like you got to let the ref do his job. And I know that people may have differing opinions on that, and that's cool. But when we're talking about the sport, you got to let the ref do his job. You can have your opinion, and that's fine. But it's just a bunch of weird things that are going on with the sport that really you normally wouldn't talk about. Like you normally wouldn't care. I'm sure when the crowd is full of thousands of people, there's many people yelling out "Stop the fight." But when there's only like 35 people in the room, you know what I mean? It's a big deal, and it's something that's not that should be taken serious. For a commentator to be making a statement like that.
Yeah, making any claim like that is a big deal. I agree.
And if you watch that fight like over again, if you actually listen to Paul Felder, he was probably yelling a little bit more. But Dan just went over the top. But again, I said this to you guys privately. Dan Hardy, he trains with these guys. He works for Cage Warriors where Ja Herbert was fighting at, and he has a personal relationship with these guys. I think that's why he went so extra. And I'm not defending him. I'm just saying I think that's what caused it. And obviously, right, like we said, if the fans were there, most likely Herb never would have heard that. He never
Not hearing
got
it.
mad.
Yeah.
It's not a
And
big
then he
deal.
would never. Yeah, but again, like I think on a broadcast, they should have probably tried to keep themselves together still. But yeah, again, but listen, that stoppage to me was terrible, absolutely terrible. But also to defend Herb, I think he probably had a tougher angle than probably what we saw because again, they have so many cameras in the octagon where we could look straight at better angles where we can see, oh damn, that dude's out, and Herb coming from because he's not on top of them, they have to fight. So I think he came over probably bad angle maybe, and then he's like, oh no, I think he's good, and then gets hit 3 more times where he's standing with his fist in front of his hand and basically knocked out cold, and he took extra damage. But again, the reffing is not. It's not an easy job. It's all about the angles and stuff like that too.
Dude, the lives of 2 human beings are in your hand. It's not it's not an easy job. You make the decision, and just like I mentioned to you before, no matter what decision you make, you're gonna have critics. You know what I mean? So I think that Herb handled that correctly in the sense of coming out after the fight and doubling down on his stance and saying, "Listen, man, like this is what I saw, and you're entitled to your opinion. That's totally fine." But you just can't cross that line. You know what I mean? And that's all. I wanted to bring that up, because like I mentioned, the sport has come a long way, but I still think that like these little pieces of drama that come along with the sport sometimes really put a bad taste in people's mouths.
It's so insane, right? It's that's kind of the point, right? It's so insane, right? Because you look at something like that, and then you go back, I don't know how long ago, 3 months maybe, with the Anthony Smith Glover Teixeira fight. Anthony Smith got battered for two and a half rounds, to the point where, look, man, you said it earlier, Raul. We all love to see a good back and forth. We all love to see a brawl. We all like to see somebody get put to sleep or knocked out or however.
It's terrible.
That was terrible, bro. I was sitting here and I was like, I don't want to watch this anymore, man.
But let me ask a question about that fight. Whose fault is it really? Because that fight.
That's what I'm gonna get to. He was
defending himself. He was moving.
Now let me tell you, right? Yes, right, but no. You rewatch that fight, and there's so many pockets where he was just hand like this, just to have some sort of defense. It was sad, right? Now,
All right,
all that aside,
but the
after the
coaches,
fact,
what about the
here,
coaches?
yep,
Because me personally,
exactly.
I think
That's exactly what I'm gonna say.
the coaches should have stopped that fight.
Now
So
check it out.
I think it was Jason Herzog who might have been the ref that night. So I
Yeah,
think he's at fault. He should have stopped. He should have called the fight himself too. I mean,
earlier,
but
much earlier.
the
Now,
coaches like who are his friends and training partners,
yes,
like
training
he
partners, family.
he literally said, "I'm losing teeth." Like, are you
Yes.
serious?
Yeah,
Now,
but did
here's
Like
you
the
he
watch
thing.
him
literally
after the
moved it
fight?
over.
Did you watch
Here's what I'm
after the
gonna say.
fight where he said
Here's
he
the
would have
thing.
fired them
He would have fired them.
if
He
they would have
says that
stopped it?
he says he pretty much has a clause with them, essentially saying that if you ever throw in a towel, you are immediately fired, no questions asked. Now, when you have somebody like that, a fighter, essentially controlling the shots, because look, if we can agree on something, Lionheart is exactly that. He has a heart of a lion. That guy is an animal. He's never going to quit, and he showed that, right? But to what avail? I mean, you got to stop yourself from yourself. And if I love you and I'm watching you get battered, fire me all day, man. You need to stop.
Yeah.
I agree. I agree 100%. And I think a lot that fight, along with a few other fights around that time, really brought up that conversation, right? When the sport turns into who can take the most shots or who's the biggest macho man, I think that's where the sport really heads in the wrong direction. You know, the
Agreed.
idea is that these mixed martial artists are expressing themselves, they're showing their skills, but there's that thin line between sports and entertainment and then abusive head trauma and stuff like that you see
Yep.
on TV. So it's definitely a conversation worth having, and I totally agree with what you mentioned.
I have a question, and it's off topic to what we're talking about now. So, what do you? Because obviously Bellator's back now, and they have their bubble, what they call a fight spear, which is terrible to
Here we
me.
go. Here we go.
So
This
what do you
podcast
guys
is
like?
sponsored by UFC,
No,
not by Bellator,
listen.
according to Jose. Not by
I
Bellator.
Never.
I like Bellator a lot. I watch their fights just as much as I watch UFC. I think UFC puts on better fights, but it is what it is. They're just a bigger brand for MMA, whatever. But I like the name Fight Island. Obviously, it was a bit of like a switch and bait or whatever. Like everyone thought, oh, they're gonna fight on the freaking
I
beach
thought
or
they were
whatever.
gonna fight on the island. Yeah,
Yeah.
I thought they were gonna fight on the beach.
But whatever. They were in Fight Island, which was Yas Island in Abu Dhabi, and it was enclosed to them. So like in a way, it was his own bubble. They had thousands of tests and stuff like that. They were there for a month, had no real COVID positive tests. Like it was, it was amazing. And Bellator is doing it, and I think the Mohegan Sun and I think Connecticut. I think it works out for them because most of their
Vastly different.
Obviously, also Abu Dhabi helped. They paid for the UFC to come there too, so there's that.
Of course.
Bellator is doing this on their own, but like I just think the name is kind of corny. They didn't have to come up with a fight spear. Like I don't know if Coker is like serious about it. I just think it's a corny name. Fight Island, it's good marketing. It was a lie, but it was good marketing. I'd rather wear a Fight Island shirt than a Fight Spear shirt. It just sounds
I just feel like that's really Coker's brand, right? I mean, look, Bellator is a fine league. I mean, they're, in my opinion, well, I was gonna say number 2, but I like PFL honestly, but top 3, I guess, right? With UFC obviously being number 1. So, in my opinion, it's on brand with him, his staff, what he likes to do and put out there. So, I mean, I get it. I'm not shocked. He kind of reminds me, I don't know if you guys are familiar, but the gentleman who owns Bang Energy, he's kind of along those same lines. Yeah, look him up when we're done here. He's kind of along those same lines where it's like kind of corny, but it catches your eye, and it's flashy, but it's kind of corny. It's like the old grandpa at the party with a big gaudy gold chain and like his chest hairs out, where you don't want to look, but you look because it catches your eye, and you're like, I get it.
Sounds like you in 4 years.
Listen,
look at that.
And I would also say, in regards to what Bellator's got going on, listen, man, they're gonna do what they have to do to survive as a company. And let's face it, like being the third best show in town, there's still money to be made,
I personally don't think they're the third best. I think they are the second best.
I'm saying even if they were the third,
and I
there's
think,
money to
and
be
also
made.
like to defend them, because I know you think I hate them. They're getting much better now. They're putting up like more serious fights. They're not doing these backyard shows, whatever. Like they had Ken Shamrock versus Royce Gracie at like they were in their 50s or 40s, whatever. Like they're not doing those clown show matchups and stuff like that anymore. Everything's more serious. I like that because it's easier to take it more serious. Like, you know, obviously you can do a one-off having these like weird matchups and stuff like that, but like they're putting on much more serious fights and stuff like that. Like again, tonight's headliner is Ben Henderson versus Michael Chandler. That's a great fight. Like
it's a rematch.
It's a second fight. I like a lot of their fighters, they're unknown. Like Darian Caldwell, who's from Jersey, he's great. Their double champ. I think it's one of the Pitbull brothers. I don't know which they have. I don't know. I think it's or Patricio. He's a double champ. I mean, no one knows. Probably most casual MMA fans don't know him, but like he probably could be a champion in UFC. Like they have a lot of great fighters. They have their own. Like Douglas Lima, I think is their best fighter in Bellator for sure. I think he would go into UFC and I think he would knock out a lot of guys.
I agree.
Just to defend Bellator a little bit, but PFL is good too. But they're on some like kind of like hard grounds with some fighters because their fighters aren't getting paid. Their fighters are getting paid. They're getting paid $1,000 a month instead of them because I don't think they're gonna, because the way they do it's a season, so it's not like a regular like one championship UFC or Bellator where they just put different fight cards on. They do it as a tournament style. So I liked it up until now because now they have like hundreds of fighters who can't fight. So that because of how their structure is, it's a season and it's not fair to them. And getting paid $1,000 a month. Listen, if you're a professional athlete or someone like myself working a regular job, $1,000 a month ain't gonna cut it for bills.
It's $250 a week, man.
Not only that, I mean, you're taking damage, bro. You know what I mean? Like that probably wasn't even worth a medical bill. You know what I mean?
Like you're not pushing cards here, man.
I'm saying that that's what they're getting paid right now instead of fighting. So like,
for sure,
okay. Gotcha.
So, but like again, listen,
$1,000 a month doesn't even cover like healthy eating. You know?
No, bro. That's McDonald's every day for 30 days.
And there's no excuse. Bellator is back. I think this is their second fight card they put on. LFA, which is not it's professional fighting, but it's just like a lower scene or whatever. They're back. There's other leagues that are back. Like there's no reason for PFL not to be trying to do something. It's not fair to their fighters. So again, I like them because I like the whole thing, and like they have the $1 million contract that $1 million paycheck that they get if they win the whole season, whatever. Listen, the dude Lance Palmer, he won it twice, so he's a multi-millionaire now. He won $2 million, and he actually got the money because people were like kind of iffy on that. So I'm like, I just think they need to do something, man. Like it's not fair to fighters. They need to get paid, right? They need to make money, right? They have families and things like that,
Yeah, I agree. That's 100% right.
So yeah, I think that we covered like a lot of different things, a lot of different topics. I think we did a great job in that. If I can just like kind of look ahead a little bit, if we can look ahead to next week. Obviously, next week is a huge fight, right? It's a pretty good card. We got some big names in there, some up and comers. But it's what I'm talking about is UFC 252, and it's headlined by Stipe Miocic, who's the current heavyweight champion, fighting against Daniel Cormier, who's the former heavyweight champion. This is a trilogy fight. If I'm not mistaken, it's Daniel's final fight, win or lose. Daniel, obviously being someone that is really a leader in the sport, came in from Strikeforce, was doing this thing for a long time, beat a lot of the top heavyweights, and then had a run at light heavyweight. Obviously back and forth with John Jones, was a double champion in the UFC for some time. So if we can just kind of break that card down, I don't know if you guys want to even start off with the heavyweight, with the main event, or you want to go through the main card.
There's a lot of good fights on the main card. There's there's a co-main event, Sean O'Malley versus Chito Vera, which I think is going to be an amazing fight.
Yep.
I agree,
there is the heavyweight fight with JDS, and I think it's
Rosenstruck. He's fighting Rosenstruck.
Yeah, so that's a really good fight. There's some good fights.
John Dodson's on the card as well. John Dodson's fighting.
And listen, dude, the Merab, I don't know how to say his last name. I'll butcher it. He's freaking insane. I think he's already on pace to probably break the takedown record, and I think he's only had like 4 fights. Like I think he had like 16 takedowns in his last fight, or 20 or something like that. He is a monster, and like He's not ranked or anything like that. I think he's finally getting a ranked opponent in John Dotson, and I think that's a. So you know how we talked about before, like with Weidman's getting this guy Akhmedov, who's a very good fighter, and Weidman's kind of older. This is another one of those matchups. Like Dotson's been around for a long time. He's
tough fighter.
Listen, I don't think he's anywhere near done, but he's going up against a young kid. And listen, one of Dotson's last fight was against Nathaniel Wood, who I think is a really, really good prospect, and he wiped the floor with him. So there's that. So I mean, he has beat these young prospects. So I mean, I think Merab is really going to give him issues, though. I think his wrestling is insane. Like the pace he has, he doesn't get tired. He'll wrestle you for 25 minutes, 30 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever it is. Like I think that's going to be a really good fight.
Yeah, so let's start off with the Junior Dos Santos fight, and then we'll work our way up the card.
So the JDS fight, right? I think that's really interesting. So let's just speak hypothetically here. Let's say Derek Lewis gets it done against Oleinik, right? The possibility of him going against the winner of this fight is huge. Now, if you have JDS winning, that's a rematch there. You know, Derek Lewis lost that first fight. Apparently I think he tore his ACL or MCL or something like that, which was attributed to his loss apparently. So that would be a fun fight to watch. And then you got to assume the winner of that would be going, against the champ, whoever it may be. Well, see, and you know what? To jump off real quick, that's kind of a tricky thing too, right? Daniel Cormier, Stipe Miocic. Daniel Cormier's last fight, he wins, he vacates the title immediately. Stipe has already talked about this could possibly be his last fight as well. So then what happens? You're left with a vacant title. It's kind of a strange situation, right? I mean, especially if Stipe loses. If Stipe loses, I think more than not, he probably is going to retire. And if he wins, who's waiting for him? Predator.
Yeah.
So that's a rematch that I think the Predator might take, because Stipe feels like he's kind of. He's obviously the champ. He's obviously done. He's probably the best heavyweight of all time, but he feels a little bit in and out right now. He's talking about retirement, and like Dana White says, anytime you speak about retirement, you should probably retire, right? So it's a tricky situation. So let's say the title's vacated. You have Francis Ngannou. He has to fight for it. Whether it's vacated, whether he's next up, he has to fight for it, right? So then you get to look at the Derek Lewises of the world and the Rosenstrucks and the JDSs who've been, fighting pretty well. Huh?
Curtis
Blades is up there.
Yeah, exactly. Razor Blades, who's been on a freaking tear, man. That pretty much, if it wasn't for Ngannou, he's number one, right? He's going to be number one. So it's going to be a fun time for the heavyweight division, I think, and also kind of a weird time. Looking forward to see how it goes, man. I'm very curious to see that main event and see how that turns out.
Cool. Now let's see if you'll answer the original question I asked you, which was
I did
JDS against Rosenstruck.
I did with another question.
What are your thoughts on that? I mean, obviously Rosenstruck's coming off that loss, that one-sided loss to Francis. Yeah. Before that, I mean, 10-0, right, and running through dudes. What do you think is going to be the outcome of that fight? I mean, I know obviously this fight is going to have a lot of at stake in regards to the connectedness to the main event. But what do you think about this fight per se?
I think Rosenstruck's style is not a good matchup for JDS. I think JDS, as he gotten older, he's evolved, sort of like Overeem. So I think if JDS can kind of keep the distance a little bit, pick his shots correctly, kind of wear him out, I think JDS wins. It's hard to come back after a knockout like that when you're Rosenstruck. You can train a lot of muscles. You can't train that chin. Not after a knockout like that, man.
That was brutal. That was in May. It's not like it was like last year. It was May.
That was pretty recent. And you're going against JDS, who's known for his boxing, man. He's got power. He's got good hands. He's got good cardio. BJJ.
I don't know if you guys saw, but JDS is in amazing shape right now. I think he's starting to do the keto diet or something like that. But he is shredded. So I mean, that could play a factor into it.
You could sign me up for JDS, man.
Yeah, I second that too, man. I think JDS takes that fight. I think it's one of those things where when we're talking about JDS, he's just one of those dudes that hangs around that top 5, that top 7. You know what I mean? He's fought really all the main guys there. and he's the real deal. Rosenstruck, obviously somebody that also really went on a tear, right? Beat guys like Arlovsky. He beat Overeem. So definitely not just a ringer that they're throwing in there. But in cases like this, I think that just because of the timing, Rosenstruck coming off of that really bad knockout to Francis, Dos Santos obviously changing his physique. I've got to say JDS takes this one. And if I could just look at this for a second, as of right now, the odds are still not up on that, but I could probably see those odds being a little close too.
I would assume. I mean, yeah, like obviously, I think actually no, I feel like actually they'll probably put Rosenstruck as a favorite because of that loss.
Yeah,
I
me
think
too.
even though, like, listen, JDS has lost to
He lost to Francis too.
He lost to Francis too. It wasn't that much better. Like,
No.
he obviously he lasted longer than 18 seconds. But again,
I think that Francis knockout against Rosenstruck is one of those knockouts that changes your career. You know what I mean?
Bro,
I don't think that was just a
brutal.
normal loss. I think it's one of those losses that changes you.
it was crazy, man. He came at him like in a flurry, and then like the whole time Rosenstruck is like still trying to counter back. So he's like doing leg kicks. He's trying to hit him, and he's just You got Francis, who's crazy big and strong.
And let's be honest, man. If Francis is running at you, throwing a flurry of punches,
yeah, it's just a
what else
matter of
can you
like
do?
when, right? It's not if you're gonna go to sleep.
Yeah.
It's when you're gonna go to sleep.
What else can you do?
So who do you
All
have
right,
on that
so
one, Jose?
I think JDS is. I think JDS is gonna do better. I think he's gonna do better than him. I think he's gonna outwork him, and I think it's gonna be probably. I think it's gonna be a decision. I think with like his new physique, I think he looks in amazing shape. I think it's gonna help with his boxing. I think he's be a lot more faster moving around, and I think he's gonna win the fight for sure.
Word. And then moving right up to the co-main event, we got Sean O'Malley. Obviously, he's 12-0. Really at least one of the most fan favorite, popular fighters that is coming up. Fighting against, like you mentioned before, Chito Vera, somebody that's been around for some time. Trains with our guy Alex Perez over there in California. I would say that in regards to O'Malley, I think this is definitely this is a rise in competition compared to his last fight. His last fight, he fought the dude with the old school mustache. And that was a walk-off knockout, man. O'Malley really, his stock rose after that knockout. But I think Vera's going to be one of those scrappy guys, man, that, you never know, man. That experience, man, it gets these young fighters. So I can see this going. I think O'Malley will probably edge it out because he's got the power. But honestly, man, it sounds like a hot take, but I wouldn't be surprised, man, if Vera gets him. It wouldn't surprise me, you know what I mean? Especially if it goes deeper and later into the rounds. Who knows? Like I mentioned, Vera's just one of those guys. He's got 6 losses, but he's just one of those guys that's been around. So I could definitely see that going his way, but I'll take O'Malley.
I mean, yeah, I would take O'Malley too. I mean, just because how he's been looking of late, and this is definitely his toughest fight, and I think I love that he wanted this fight. Like he said himself, that because Vera's been on a good run. He lost his last fight, which a lot of people thought that he
it was
won.
controversial.
And and O'Malley said the same thing. He's like, nah, Cheeto won that fight. He's like, I want to fight him, and I like that because you know what? He wants to fight tougher competition, and I respect that. He's already kind of he's on the rise. He's great on social media. He's great with what he does, like promoting his fights and stuff. He's very funny, and the hair is a great look. He dyed his hair to the flag of I think Cheeto's Ecuadorian. So
Ecuadorian.
He dyed the color of his hair to the flag of Ecuador. That's like amazing. It's hilarious.
He's got that body too, man. He's got that body for that division, man. He's lanky.
He's filled out since he's filled out since the Contender Series days. So I mean, I think this. I would like to see it go like 3 rounds. I want to see this be like just a real tough fight. Where like for both of them, not like saying someone gets damaged crazy, but like just like a technical fight like we saw last week with Whitaker and Till. That's the kind of fight I want to see. So like I definitely think O'Malley has like a shot. Will win this fight, but listen, I probably would bet some money on Vera just to make some money.
Yeah, I forgot his name before, but his name was Eddie Wineland, the guy that O'Malley did the walk-off knockout. And I could tell you, man, Cheeto's no Eddie Wineland, man. He's a scrappy dude. He's been in there with a lot of dudes. And before his last fight, I mean, you could really say he's like on a five fight winning streak, because the last fight where he took the loss, a lot of people say he won. So
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised, man. I wouldn't be surprised if that hype train gets derailed on the 15th. What do you think about that fight, Chris?
I just think Sean O'Malley's length is really going to win him the fight. I mean, he's got, I think it's a 3-inch advantage on him in the height and like an inch and a half on the reach. He's such a good striker, man. I just think he's going to pick him apart. I'm shocked if this goes past the second round.
I don't know, man. Lately, I've been watching a lot of those guys that train over there. Jose, I don't know the exact. I don't want to mess it up. The gym where Alex Perez, Carlos Esparza, where they train.
I think it's
is it
Team
Okoya?
Ohana or something.
Ohana or
I think
Ohana?
Team Oyama.
Oh yeah. That's what he trains. Yeah.
Carlos Esparza, Alex, scrappy people, man. And like I mentioned before with Vera, man, I wouldn't be surprised, man, if this was it for him, man.
Vera trains with Jason Perillo, Luke Rockhold's old boxing coach, Bisping's boxing coach. I mean, he's a fantastic coach.
He's not a scrub, man. He's not a scrub.
Yeah.
So
agreed.
This is not like any of his last fights, and I know like people like trying to say that he was getting fed cans, but I mean, listen, he's also a young kid. He's came in just with a lot of hype from what he did in the Contender Series, and it probably ties into the fact that Snoop Dogg was going crazy when he knocked that dude out. So like that plays a factor in that too. But like, listen, he is a young kid, and he doesn't have a ton of fights, but like he's trying to make his name. So like, I like the way he's been built up. Like he hasn't just it's not like he got put all the way up into like a top 10 opponent. Which I mean, most likely after this, he's probably getting a top 10 guy.
Yeah, he's definitely going to.
I also think that Sean O'Malley is one of these guys that could really change the game for the young up-and-coming fighters. I think he's got, you mentioned it earlier, Jose, his YouTube presence and the following that he's been able to, gather in this short amount of time. I think he's going to be one of these guys, man, that really changes the game, starts building these different streams of income, and opens the eyes of different fighters into like, listen, man, yeah, we could fight and get paid in the octagon, but there's a lot of money to be made, especially if you can build that following. So I just think he's one of those guys, man. He's something special.
He made a basketball jersey that looks like the Boston Celtics one. It says O'Malley on it. Dude, it sold out in 39 seconds. Like I saw the report today. So 39 seconds, and I think he made like $20,000 off that. Wow. So like, think about that.
Again, he has like crazy video, and he's and to be honest, like his personality is like he's just a young kid, man, and he's like laid back. So
he's having fun.
He posts YouTube videos about his picks on different cards. So he'll go through a whole card and just sit on his couch and with his laptop open and talk about what he thinks is gonna happen. So I think
did you guys see his video on him training like Tony Ferguson?
Yeah, that was hilarious. That was so good.
Hilarious.
So
I gotta check it out.
It's gold. So good, yeah.
Something about him though, man. Something about him. But yeah, I think he gets it. But like I mentioned, it would surprise me, man, if we see something out of Vera. And then man, moving on to the big fight, man. The big fight, what everyone's really been waiting for is that trilogy fight between Daniel Cormier and the current champion Stipe Miocic. Obviously, something that if we could, Jose or Chris, you guys want to recap the first two fights, how they played out to get us to this moment?
Yeah, Cormier knocking him out in the first fight with that beautiful uppercut, if I'm not mistaken.
As he was the current light heavyweight champion.
As he was the light heavyweight champion, this is how he became the double champ. Knocking out Miocic, which was, a shock to me. I mean, I thought he could win, but I didn't think he would win like that. I thought it'd be a more ground and pound situation, but that was completely out of the ordinary for me. But super impressive. I mean, DC is king of the hill, man. It doesn't matter if he fights John Jones again or not. He's just a class act all the way. He's the champ that you want to have. Now, on that same note, Stipe's amazing. Stipe's a great champ. He's a freaking firefighter. I mean, he's a hero, especially nowadays, man. He's a first responder first, obviously, training second. And for him to come into this trilogy with that win in the second fight, which was, again, I mean, him coming back after getting knocked out by DC, who's just so powerful, and him knocking out DC in And that second fight was, I mean, this is just made in gold, man. This third fight is going to be unreal. It's going to be for the greatest heavyweight of all time, essentially. Whoever sees this fight, they're not going to worry about the last two. They're going to consider whoever wins the greatest heavyweight of all time.
Yeah, and I'm curious to see what kind of changes DC made in this camp, because even that second fight, man, it was going pretty good for DC. It just
I thought DC
something
was winning the
happened.
second fight.
Something happened, man, in those later rounds where you just kept seeing that Stipe left hand go to the body of DC, and it's like one of those fights where you're watching it and you're like, dude, he's gonna keep hitting you in the body, but DC just couldn't read it. Like, I don't know what was happening with DC, but like it was obvious to everyone but him that he just kept leaving like his body open on that left side. And Stipe, man, he really stuck to his guns. I don't know if it's something that they saw on tape. I don't know if it's something that he just switched up in the heat of the moment and said, hey, man, we see an opening here. But when I tell you, man, he locked it. He had a RoboCop lock on DC's body, man, and he switched it up upstairs, then went down low. And listen, man, DC ate a few of those, but there was a few at the end that really curled him up, man. And I'm curious to see if that's if DC was able to fix that in training. I'm sure he has. He's obviously, like you mentioned, right, absolute professional. But I think that's going to be his downfall if he didn't fix that. I think it's Stipe weathering the storm, especially early on, dragging him to the later rounds and working that body, man. Because if it's something that we know about DC, like we talked about Derek Lewis, right? It's these guys that are really, really great fighters, but their conditioning, their body is always in question. So let's see if DC made the right adjustments. I'm sure he did. And if I had to make a pick, man, it's one of those, like, your body, your heart is telling you one thing, but your brain is telling you something else. I would say my brain is telling me Stipe, man, because I really think he might be the GOAT in that division. But my heart would love to see Daniel, bring that title back over to AKA and walk away on top, for sure.
Yeah, you want to see him walk off to the sunset. He deserves that much. I mean, he's been such a
he's a trailblazer in the sport, man. Trailblazer in the sport, and his contributions not only in the octagon but obviously on the commentating side. I think he's excellent. He's one of these guys that really showed. And I think his story runs even deeper, man. It's one of these guys that made it to the top, right, in the Olympics, and he didn't make it to he didn't get the gold medal. So he's one of these guys that made it to the big stage and took loss after loss, but bounced back, man. And so I think his story is going to be remembered as one of those, a champion, but also a guy that came into the octagon, gave it all he had, and when he did take losses, but he came back, man. So. That's what I think on that. Jose, what are your thoughts on that, man?
I'm kind of same way you feel. Like, I think I'm leaning definitely towards DC, mainly because he won the first fight. He was winning that second fight, and his problem was he got too happy with standing up because he was winning the exchanges for the first 2-3 rounds, and going into the fourth, his coaches in the corner, I remember them telling. Like, they were telling him, like, wrestle. Like, they told him, listen, we're towards the end of the fight. Let's start switching it up. He just didn't listen. And he said it himself. He's like, no, listen, I was landing. I was like, oh, man, I was peppering him. I was landing everything. He's like, so why, and then I got too comfortable with that. And then, he came back. So I definitely think that he's going to, I think he's going to change that up. And I think, because I watch the podcast with him and Errol every Monday. He's talking about how he's in amazing shape. He says he's already lower than what he was before. I think that fight he went in heavier. I think I'm not too sure.
He went in heavier. Yeah, he went in heavier. Yeah, he wanted more power.
And he has the people he's brought in for this camp too. He has
Corey Anderson.
Corey Anderson helping him out. He's got Luke Rockhold back.
Overtime Bellator Anderson.
Yeah, he's got Luke Rockhold back from helping out and Kane. So I mean, listen, he's got a good crew from training. And listen, you joke about Corey Anderson, but again, he's a top light heavyweight. His wrestling is amazing. He's gotten a lot better since the days of Tough, man. He came into the UFC with I think 6 fights or something like that, and what the work he's done with Mark Henry, and now I think he's still in Jersey with Mark Henry. So I think he's gonna do great in Bellator. But back to the main event, I'm gonna lean with DC. and I definitely think that I think he retires, but I definitely think that the UFC, if he wins, I think this works out in favor for John Jones because obviously he wants a big fight at heavyweight. He wanted Francis. They wouldn't give him the money. I think if DC wins, the UFC's like, hey, we know you want to retire, but come on, let's just get this one big giant payday. I hope it doesn't happen. I hope he wins and retires. That's how I feel. I think Stipe can definitely have a chance to win the fight, but I think DC has more ways to win the fight. I definitely think that. More. He's the better wrestler. I think Stipe is a good wrestler too, and he's probably maybe better stand up. But I definitely think that DC is going to take control of the fight very early.
I think on that DC retiring thing, I think if we know anything about him, he's a man of his word. I think he puts his family above all, and when he says something, he's going to do it. So I have to trust that when he says, "Listen, this is it," I got to think this is it. You know what I mean? I don't think this is a BJ Penn situation where he's going to try to find glory towards the end and he just can't. I think he's going to go out.
I don't see DC fighting in the streets and stuff like that either. So I think
dude, he's got a good gig, man. He's got a good gig already set up for him.
Yeah.
You know, he's one of the lucky guys that could retire from the sport with his brain still intact.
Yeah.
And let's face it, man. This guy literally, he's a high school coach, right? He's a high school wrestling coach. He's just one of those guys, man. One of those special guys that the sport. I don't know if the sport always appreciates him. I think he's one of those guys that get the appreciation when he's gone. Unfortunately,
I think more now, more than when he was the heavyweight champ.
Yeah.
Listen, I don't know whatever reason I didn't like him before, but I think it was just stupidity.
It's because of John. It's because of John Jones.
Yeah,
that's why.
Yeah. Well, their rivalry was great. It was very funny.
Fucking phenomenal.
But like,
sorry.
You know, I think for me after that fight we had with Gustafsson, I was like, damn, this dude is it's tough.
Yeah.
He's the best. He's the second best light heavyweight ever.
But what I think is DC's a good dude, but John just brings something out of him, bro. John brings the worst out of him. He brings the worst out of him. So, like, when you see DC at these press conferences and he's going back and forth with John, that's not really DC. You know what I mean? Like, that's somebody else. That's somebody else that – And let's face it, man, John beat him, man, both times, and he beat him decisively. He finished him.
Very much so.
So it's like, you know, I get what you're saying, Jose. I do get what you're saying because those build up with John, man.
Oh,
they bring
classic.
the worst out of him, man.
Classic.
He's like a slimy dude. When you see DC, he's got like the used car salesman suit on. You know what I mean? He's just like. It's just a slimy dude trying to go back and forth with the coke jokes and all this nonsense. You know what I mean?
Now,
so it's just one of those things.
Now, let me ask you, right, on this main event with DC and Stipe, do you think that the smaller cage favors one person more than the other? Or do you think DC, it won't be much of a factor?
I would say DC, especially if he's going for that double leg, man.
Yeah, I agree.
You know, if he could pin him up against that cage, you know, I definitely think it favors DC, but who knows, man? Like, I haven't really known what to expect, especially in a lot of the fights I've been watching lately. It's like you got these wrestlers that are national champion wrestlers that, you know, could definitely take it to the ground, but they want to stand up. They want to prove points.
They want to prove that they can strike.
So I don't really know what's going on with that. You know what I mean? So I would say the smaller cage favors DC. Just because, you know, he wants to get Stipe against the cage, pressure him,
wear him
put
out,
body weight on him, getting some short shots here and there. But who knows, man? I don't even know anymore. Sport is going crazy right now.
DC said, like, he's like, when he said when this fight got announced, he's like, oh, I'm hoping it's not in Abu Dhabi. I hope it's in the Apex, and I hope it's in a small cage. He's like, Stipe, bring your wrestling shoes. Like, it clearly.
That's the key to victory.
Yeah. But you know what? It does favor him in that aspect. But I think for the smaller cages, I think it affects people who use a lot more footwork. So like O'Malley said in the last fight, like he said that he'd rather fight in a big cage because he has more space to kind of circle around and stuff like that.
Yeah.
With DC, I mean, with Stipe, I don't think he's necessarily that relies like a ton on like lateral movement stuff like that. So I think he's gonna be fine there. I mean, I think he'd probably rather have a big cage too, but I think he's gonna be perfectly fine. I don't think this fight affects it. I think it affects the next title fight, which is between Adesanya and Paulo Costa. I think that fight
Yes.
will affect you
Yeah.
way more
Yeah.
than this one.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah, I
100%. Because Izzy needs that work, man. He needs that room to work.
Yeah, I can't wait to be able to talk to you guys about that one. I think
Ooh, that's gonna
we
be a
should
good one,
wait to
man.
talk about that one.
We'll save
Yeah.
that. We'll save that
You
for later.
know, but I can't wait,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah.
That's gonna be one of those fights, man, where it's like, I feel like Izzy's changing the game too, man. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
When you
That's
talk
another
about
one.
Sean
That's
O'Malley
another
and what
one.
he's doing, but Izzy's just like this guy that, you know, when you talk
He's
about people
different.
that don't
He's
duck and
different,
dodge,
man.
Yeah.
man, he wants to
The
fight
broken
these
native,
guys,
baby.
man.
The broken
He
native.
wants to fight these guys. Even when he fought Anderson, you know, it's like he wants to fight these guys. He wants to be remembered. He wants that legacy. You know what I mean? And you gotta love that about the sport, man. But you know, I listen, man. We're already like 2 hours in, man. Just about, and it didn't really feel that long. But
Are we? I didn't even realize.
yeah, we're probably like we're probably like hour and a half, almost 2 hours in.
One thing on that DC Stipe, one thing I know for sure, it's gonna be a great fight, man. We're gonna
Oh
be in for
yeah,
a
for
treat.
sure. Yeah, for sure. I can't wait to talk to you guys after and kind of recap, you know, what our thoughts were now, and then what ended up happening.
Yeah.
But for sure, the fans win, especially during COVID, obviously, with
Yeah.
everything going on. The idea of being able to watch, you know, a legacy fight,
Yeah. Exactly.
is something that's really, really cool, and I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, man. Me too. 100%. Can't wait.
So I don't know. How do you guys feel? Like I feel as though this conversation, I really enjoyed it. I think that we covered a lot of different topics, for sure. We talked a little bit about the effect that COVID has had on the business. We talked about some fun fights that are coming up. We even were able to talk a little bit about you know, the politics in the fight game sometimes. But like I mentioned before, man, with everything going on, it's a really good time to be an MMA fan. Definitely for sure. There's not a lack of fights, right, between fight nights and
Oh no.
pay-per-views, and then Dana White Contender Series, all this stuff. Is definitely action to be talked about. So I'm excited about it.
Definitely,
Yeah,
man.
absolutely. There's no
It's
shortage of that, man.
like MMA is in full effect. I mean,
Yes, sir.
the kind of series is gonna be on for the next 10 weeks, and you know,
Mm-hmm.
last week was pretty good. You know, listen, this week right here we got the Contender Series, Bellator, and UFC all in 1 week. I mean, if you're a
Yeah,
fight
it's great.
fan, like you got plenty of stuff going on.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. That's right. There's no shortage at all, man. It's so much fun. It's a great time for us. So much fun. There's no more. It's no more Underground Railroad for us, man. We on the main screen. We're good.
So yeah, so right now I'm looking at Bellator right now. Mitrion's about to fight. That fight's coming up.
Yeah, that's the co-main
So
event.
so before we end this off, right? Let's make official picks for what's happening in Bellator right now. That way we can talk about it after the fact as well. Let's start with the main event. It's going to be Benson against it's Chandler, right? Chandler?
It's
Michael
Michael
Chandler.
Michael
Chandler.
Chandler. I've always been a Benson fan. Obviously ever
Sign
since
me up.
that legendary Pettis fight and the, you know, what was that, the foot off the cage kick, right?
The Showtime pick.
Yeah, the Showtime kick. But also, man, Benson's one of these dudes that's like Gumby, man, super flexible guy. Can't really choke him out, can't get him out of there. So I'm gonna have to rock with Benson. I think he took the loss in the first fight, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
he did.
yeah, he did.
Yeah.
But
So
it
I
was a
think he
very good,
avenges his
very good
loss. I
fight.
think he gets the W today, man.
Yeah, I would have to agree to it, man. I'm a big fan of Benson. Completely honest, 100% biased. I really, really like him. I've been a fan of his for years. Since I, came up on the sport in the UFC when he was, the guy with the toothpick in his mouth. Um, so
He looked like
I'm
Russell
pulling.
Wilson with long hair.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So I'm pulling for him for sure, man. Michael Chandler's an animal. He's champ for a reason, right? I mean, the guy's legit. I got Benson.
Cool. How about you, Jose?
I'm rooting for Chandler. I think he's very underrated. I think that he was their champion for at 155 for a long time. I think that he still is he's 34, but that's not really that old. But I think
No.
he's still at his prime. He lost his last fight to to one of the Pitbull brothers. But I mean, hey, stuff happens. I think, and from what I saw, honestly, what I've seen from Benson in Bellator, he hasn't really been like amazing. He's won his last couple fights. I think he's won his last 3. So he's definitely seems like he's got his stuff together. I just don't think that he's gonna beat Chandler. I think Chandler, from what I saw for that last fight, just outworked him. You know, just wrestling and stuff like that. When it comes to Chandler, he's such a beast. He's so strong. He's not the tallest 155, but he's thick as hell and he's very strong. I mean, he probably could be fighting at 170 if he really wanted to.
Yeah, for sure. So we'll see what happens, man. We'll be able to talk about it next week and see if you were right. Obviously, me and Chris went with Benson. You went with Michael Chandler. I think we're right and you're wrong, but we'll see. You know what I mean? Yeah, I guess we could end it by just saying hopefully this is something that we can continue to do, man. I know that Get the Gloves is kind of like an inside joke between all of us, right? In our younger days. You know, but I think it's a really cool opportunity, obviously, with the podcast movement, everything that's going on. And obviously we have these conversations all the time, right? In our free time. So why not kind of come together? We can reconnect and have these conversations for people to hear and listen to. So I think it's really cool. And I just want to thank you guys for, agreeing to do this, because I was excited about it. I know Jose and Chris, you mentioned it as well. You know, sometimes I'm kind of like out of the mix where I want to have all these conversations. So I look at this as like a therapy session, you know, for lack of a better term.
This is great. I've been looking forward to it for a long time. I remember we used to do it before. It was so much fun. And I think it's going to be a lot like this is going to be fun for us to do too now.
Yeah, and we'll see how it goes.
I appreciate you guys inviting me, man. This is a ton of fun. I could do this every day, man. This is so cool. Really cool.
And we'll see how it goes. I mean, this is just the platform we're using right now. Hopefully, when it's edited up, you know, we'll be able to, it'll look good, and we'll be able to kind of get some people involved, you know, and get them to listen to, you know, the podcast. Hopefully, I know in the past we've talked to fighters, and hopefully that's something that we can continue to do as well, especially now virtually. So I'm really excited about it. Hopefully, you guys, the people out there, stick with us on this, and you know, if you guys ever have any questions, or if you guys are MMA fans yourselves and you'd like to join the conversation, just feel free to reach out to us. Yeah, who knows, maybe you can come on and chop it up with us as well.
Yeah, that'd be great. That'll be a lot of fun. Look forward to that.
Cool. So I guess I'll end this by just, I don't know, how should I end this? I'll say, how the hell do I end this? I'm trying to end this, but it's like, how the hell do I end this?
I'm going to drive over to your house and I'm going to get the gloves, okay?
Here we go.
All right. All I know is if you got a problem with me, you could go get the gloves. Peace out.
All right. Take care, everyone. Peace out. Let me stop this.